Devas. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Chapter 6, Dhyana Yoga. Text 1. Sri Bhagavan Vacha Anashrita Karma Phalam Karyan Karma Karoti Yaha Sasanyasi Cha Yogi Cha Nani Nirna Chakriyaha.
Hare Krishna. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, one who is unattached to the fruits of his work and one who works as he is obligated is in the renounced order of life. And he is the true mystic, not he who lights no fire and performs no duty.
Supadi umanyate.
Text 2. Yam Sanyasamiti Prahur Yogam Tam Viti Pantava Nahiya Sanyasta Shankalpo Yogi Bhavati Kashana.
What is called renunciation? You should know to be the same as yoga or linking oneself with Supreme, O son of Pandu. For one can never become a yogi unless he renounces the desire for sense gratification.
Text 3. Arukrushor Muni Yogam Karma Karma Namuchyate Yogan Bruryasya Tashyaivam Samaha Karma Namuchyate.
Hare Krishna. For one who is neophyte in the Eightfold Yoga system, work is said to be the means, and for one who is already elevated in yoga, cessation of all material activities is said to be the means.
Text 4. Yada hi nindriyateshu na karmasvan nusajyate sarva sankalpa sanyasi yoga rudharastando chyate.
Hare Krishna. A person is said to be elevated in yoga when having renounced all material desires, he neither acts for sense gratification nor engage in fruitive activities.
Text 5. Uttaredatmanatmanam natmanam avashatyate atmeva hi atmano bandhur atmeva ripuratmanaha.
Hare Krishna. One must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is a friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well.
Text 6. Bandhuratmanastasya yena atmana chitta atmanastu sarvati vartetatmeva satudvat.
For him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy.
Text 7. Chitatmana pranashantasya paramanatma samadhitaha chitasya tapamanatmanayoho.
For one who has conquered the mind, the super soul is already reached, for he has attained tranquility. To such a man, happiness and distress, heat and cold, honor and dishonor are all the same. Hare Krishna.
Right. Dhyana Vigyana Tritatma Kutasto Vijitindriyaha Yuktaiti Uchyate Yogi Samastashma Kanchanaha.
A person is said to be established in self realization and is called a yogi or mystic when he is fully satisfied by the virtue of acquired knowledge and realization. Such a person is situated in transcendence and is self controlled. He sees everything, whether it be pebbles, stones, or gold, as the same. Hare Krishna.
Text 9. Susunmuktai Udashina Matayastha Dveshya Bandhashu Tadasviti Shu Sama Buddhi.
A person is considered still further advanced when he regards honest well wishers, affectionate benefactors, the neutral meditators, the envious friends and enemies, the pious and the sinners, all with the equal mind.
Text 10. Yogi Satatvam Atmanam Rahashitaha Chitatma Nirashir Aparigraha.
A transcendentalist should always engage his body, mind, and self in relationship with Supreme. He should live alone in a secluded place and should always carefully control his mind. He should be free from desires and feelings of possessiveness.
Text 11 to 12. शुचौदेशे प्रतिष्ठाप्य स्थिरम् आसनम् आत्मनः न ते उच्चरितं न हि नीचं शैलाग्निना कुशोत्तरम् तत्रैकाग्रं मनः कृत्वा यतचितीन्द्रियक्रियः उपविश्य योगमात्मविशुद्धये.
To practice yoga, one should go to secluded place and should lay kusa grass on the ground and then cover it with a deer skin and a soft cloth. The seat should be neither too high nor too low or should be situated in a sacred place. The yogi should then sit on it very firmly and practice yoga to purify the heart by controlling his mind, senses and activities and fixing the mind on one point. Hare Krishna.
13 to 14. Samam kaya stiro grivam dhayanam achalam stiraha samprikshya nishkalam svam Nishaschandva laukayam darshanatma vigatatir brahmachari vrata stitaha manaha samyamya madhito yukta ahitamatparaha.
One should hold one's body, neck, and head erect in a straight line and stay steadily at the tip of the nose. Thus, with an unagitated, subdued mind, devoid of fear, completely free from sex life, one should meditate upon me within the heart and make me the ultimate goal of life. Hare Krishna.
66. Ginjamevam sthanam yogini yatamanasah Shanti nirvana paramam matsam stham agigachati.
Thus, practicing constant control of the body, mind, and activities, the mystic transcendentalist, his mind, regulated, attains to the kingdom of God or the abode of Krishna by cessation of material existence. Hare Krishna.
16. Natyashtastu yogasti nachintantam anashnataha nachyati svapna shilasya jagrato neva chakrina.
There is no possibility of one's becoming a yogi, O Arjuna, if one eats too much or eats too little, sleeps too much or does not sleep enough. Krishna.
17. Yuktahara viharasya yuktachetasya karmasu yuktasvapnava
Have you got the
bandhasya
headphones, Mom?
dukkha.
He who is regulated in his habits of eating, sleeping, recreation, and work can mitigate all material pains by practicing the yoga system. Hare Krishna.
Sorry, 18. Yada nitam atmani evavasthitate nispraha sarva uchyate tada.
When the yogi, by practice of yoga, disciplines his mental activities and becomes situated in transcendence, devoid of all material desires, he is said to be well established in yoga. Hare Krishna.
19. Yatadipa nivatasto nengate sopamam smrtam yogina yatachitasya yanjato yogamatmanaha.
As a lamp in a windless place does not waver, so the transcendentalist, whose mind is controlled, remains always steady in his meditation on the transcendent self. Hare Krishna.
620 to 23. Uprapamate chitam nirudham yoga sevaya yatra chivartmanam pashyanatmani tushyati sukamatyani tam yata tuti grahyam atindriyam veti yatra na chaivam yam sthitaschalati tatpataha yam labdva cha param labham mamyate nadikam tatha yasmin stino nadukena gurunapi vichalyate tam vidya dukha samyoga vigo viyogam yoga samchitam.
In the stage of perfection called trance or samadhi, one's mind is completely restrained from material mental activities by practice of yoga. This perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. In that joyous state, one is situated in the boundless transcendental happiness relates to transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth, and upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of greatest difficulty. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact.
Extra people. Sanichayo Yuktatuyo Yoga Nirvina Chaitasa Shankalpo Prabhavam Hamnas Tatyakta Sarvam Sheshtaha Manashayvandriya Gramam Viniyamamya Samantataha. Hare Krishna.
One should engage oneself in the practice of yoga with the determination and faith and not be deviated from the path. One should abandon, without exception, all material desires born of mental speculation and thus control all the senses and all sides by the mind. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Garta Mataji and Pardha Prabhuji. Thank you for your kind recitation. And there was a wonderful reciprocation to each other by saying Hare Krishna at the end, which was helping to move verse by verse in a very fluent and coherent way. So thank you for your wonderful reading. So today's verse is verse number 9 of chapter 6. And because there is hardly any purport to it, we thought of also covering the next verse, which I'll read through, and then we'll cover them both today. Suharan mitrari udasina madhyastha dvesha bandhushu sadhashu apicha papeshu sambuddhir vishishyate. Suharan mitrari udasina madhyastha dveshu bandhusu sadhashva apicha papeshu samabuddhir vishishyate. Read again. Suharan mitrari udasina madhyastha dveshu bandhushu sadhash apicha papeshu samabuddhir vishishyate. Suharat, well-wishers by nature. Mitra, benefactors with affection. Ari, enemies. Udasina, neutrals between belligerents. Madhyastha, mediators between belligerents. Dvesha, the envious. Bandhushu, relatives or well-wishers. Sadhushu, up unto the pious. Api as well as. Cha and Papeshu, unto the sinners. Samabuddhi, having equal intelligence. Vishishyate, is far advanced. Translation by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. A person is considered still further advanced when he regards honest well-wishers, affectionate benefactors, the neutral, mediators, the envious, friends and enemies, the pious and the sinners, all with an equal mind. Verse number 10, chapter 6. Yogi yujjita satatam Yogi yujjita satatam atmanam rahasi sthitaha ekaki yata chittatma nirashir parigraha. Yogi yunjita satatam atmanam rahasi sthitaha ekaki yata chittatma nirashir parigraha. Yogi yunjita satatam atmanam rahasi sthitaha Yogi, a transcendentalist, Yunjita, must concentrate in Krishna consciousness, Satatam, constantly, Atmanam, himself by body, mind, and self, Rahasi, in secluded place, Vistita, being situated, Ekaki, alone, Yatta Chitatma, always careful mind. Rahasi, in a secluded place. Sthita, being situated. Ekaki, alone. Yata chitatma. Sorry, I repeated. There was some disturbance. I was muting them. Always careful in mind. Nirasiha, without being attracted by anything else. Apigraha, free from the feeling of possessiveness. A transcendentalist should always engage his body, mind, and self in relationship with the Supreme. He should live alone in a secluded place and should always carefully control his mind. He should be free from desires and feeling of possessiveness. Purport. Krishna is realized in different degrees as Brahman, Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna consciousness means concisely to be always engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. But those who are attached to the impersonal Brahman or the localized supersoul are also partially Krishna conscious, because impersonal Brahman is the spiritual ray of Krishna, and supersoul is all pervading partial expansion of Krishna. Thus, the impersonalist and the meditator are also indirectly Krishna conscious. A directly Krishna conscious person is a topmost transcendentalist, because such a devotee knows what is meant by Brahman and Paramatma. His knowledge is the absolute truth is perfect, whereas his knowledge of the absolute truth is perfect, whereas the impersonalist and mediative yogi are imperfectly Krishna conscious. Nevertheless, all of these are instructed herewith to be constantly engaged in their particular pursuit so that they may come to the highest perfection sooner or later. The first business of a transcendentalist is to keep the mind always on Krishna. One should always think of Krishna and not forget him, even for a moment. Concentration of the mind on the Supreme is called samadhi or trance. In order to concentrate the mind, one should always remain in seclusion and avoid disturbance by external objects. He should be very careful to accept favorable and reject unfavorable conditions that affect his realization. And in perfect determination, he should not hanker after unnecessarily material things that entangle him by feelings of possessiveness. All these perfections and precautions are perfectly executed when one is directly in Krishna consciousness, because direct Krishna consciousness means self abnegation, wherein there is a very little chance for material possessiveness. Srila Rup Goswami characterizes Krishna consciousness in this way. Anasaktasya Vishyan Yataram Upiyanjataha Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yuktam Vairagyamuchyate Prapanchakattaya Buddhaya Harisambandhi Vastunaha Mokshuvi Parityago Vairagyam Falgu Kathayate. When one is not attached to anything, but at the same time accepts everything in relation to Krishna, one is rightly situated above possessiveness. On the other hand, one who rejects everything without knowledge of his relationship to Krishna is not as complete in his renunciation. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.255 to 256. A Krishna conscious person well knows that everything belongs to Krishna. Thus is always free from feelings of personal possession. As such, he has no hankering for anything on his personal account. He knows how to accept things in favor of Krishna consciousness and how to reject things unfavorable to Krishna consciousness. He is always aloof from material things because he is always transcendental and is always alone, having nothing to do with persons not in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, a person in Krishna consciousness is a perfect yogi. Om Jnanam Timirindasya Jnananjana Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Sapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamsta He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Shri Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishubhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvaivacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, dear devotees, dear friends, welcome to the session of Bhagavad Gita today. Her Grace Madhu Kumari Mataji were to take the session. However, we have swapped, so um, I'm delivering or facilitating this session today of Bhagavad Gita. And we have been reading chapter 6, um, and which is entitled as Dhyana Yoga. Now, for some of us, it can be a little daunting as to how many types of yogas being talked about, what are the purpose of all these yogas, why is it that so many kind of yogas are being described. There's a karma yoga, there's a dhyana yoga, there's this jnana yoga, there's this bhakti yoga. What's going on here? And some of the techniques of all these yogas apparently on the surface looks slightly different, and therefore um, and there are different names that are being used, Astanga yoga, etc. And it can be slightly difficult to comprehend various kind of terminologies being used here. However, if we read Srila Prabhupada's purpose, he tries to bring everything to Krishna consciousness and give us the perspective of how all of them are into or are incorporated in Bhakti Yoga, and how ultimately Dhyana Yoga aim is to meditate upon Lord Vishnu or Lord Krishna or Aniruddha form of Krishna. And to the extent that in the purport we were just reading, which was 6.10, Srila Prabhupada has elaborated that even the devotees who are trying to realize the impersonal aspect, which is the Brahman Jyoti aspect of the absolute truth, Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavaniti, Shabdayate, which means that God can be realized as Brahmeti, which is Brahman, which is the effulgence which is coming out of the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is called as the spiritual sky. And these yogis who want to be merging in the Brahman Jyoti, these are those yogis which are not offenders to the Lord. There is one class which is Mayavadis, which do not recognize the personal form of the Lord. And they are considered to be the offenders to the Lord because they are denying the existence of the personal Lord himself. Whereas there are others who are called Brahmavadis. They do consider and understand there is a personal form of the Lord, and they worship the person of the form of the Lord as well in the form of deities, but they figure out that being one with the God in the form of his Brahman Jyoti is an objective that they want to chase, they want to achieve, and that will give them higher satisfaction. And then, therefore, they try for that. And here Srila Prabhupada is saying such impersonalists, like four Kumaras were impersonalists, like Sukadev Goswami was impersonalist. They are they're partially Krishna conscious. They're not fully Krishna conscious at that point of time when they are chasing that goal. When they become devotee, then they are fully Krishna conscious. Similarly, the yogis uh, who are concentrating and focusing in their hearts um, the form of the super soul, which is the four-armed form of the Lord, which is of the size of the thumb, and this is the Vishnu form, who acts as a witness is present in every living entity, who is providing the intelligence, who is providing the um, forgetfulness, who's giving every um, food for every, uh, who's providing the intelligence for doing any action and every action. Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto matah smritir jnanam apohanam cha. It's providing mataha, intelligence, smriti, remembrance, jnanam, knowledge, apohanam, forgetfulness. Like this, and these are different forms of the Lord that is being pursued by different yogis, but this is also considered to be impartial or imperfect Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada is explaining that perfection of Krishna consciousness is when you are really performing loving devotional service to the Lord Himself, who is the Lord, who is the absolute Lord. He is Lord Krishna Himself. And in that context, Prabhupada is therefore elaborating in the verses where there could be some confusion of understanding of what does this mean. And Prabhupada goes into deeper meanings and try to explain us what this verse really means. And then Burijan Prabhu has also written this supplementary book on Bhagavad Gita. Those who have not got it, please purchase this book. It's called Surrender Unto Me. Surrender Unto Me is a very nice book. I often use, all the Bhakti Shastri students use it, and it's like a supplementary book to Bhagavad Gita. He also elaborates certain points and building upon Srila Prabhupada's purpose. So, uh, up to the verse 9th, in this particular verse, Krishna is really focusing on the point of mind. And if you look from the point text number 5 up to text number 9. I'll just read them very quickly so we get a gist of it. Krishna is speaking about the how to conquer the senses of the body into the eightfold or ashtanga, eightfold yoga system. And but after that, from text 10, when we'll read from text 10 up until text 32, he's describing the practices of Ashtanga Yoga and how one can perform Ashtanga Yoga. And in the conclusion, um, also, we have seen how Arjun is unable to follow the practices of controlling the mind through the process of such type of yogas because he finds it really difficult to control the mind. Um, he finds it extremely difficult. And then Krishna will explain very elaborately how he can control the mind in through the medium of bhakti yoga later on. However, we'll concentrate and focus on this chapter here. Now let's see this particular um, from text 5 onwards. Krishna is saying, first of all, the undercurrent theme, you read any of the chapters of Bhagavad Gita, is that one has to renounce material desires. The whole discussion arises between Krishna and Arjun. Uh, Arjun is saying, Krishna, I don't want to fight. And Krishna is saying, your renunciation of not fighting is false. And Krishna is saying, Arjun is saying, what is renunciation, Krishna? What is this that I believe that renunciation means that I just don't work and I just abstain from work and I just renounce work. I'll go to the forest and I'll focus on achieving the self-realization. And then Krishna said that this is a false renunciation. It's falgu. Hmm? It's a monkey renunciation. You will be thinking of the things of this world because they are impure desires in the heart. Unless the heart is purified by the knowledge of the Shastra, till such time, the material desires will continue to rule the mind, rule the senses, and mind and intelligence. The mind will desire, intelligence will execute, and senses will enjoy or suffer the results of those activities. So that's not a good renunciation. And Krishna explains that look, renunciation actually means that you enjoy, that you renounce the fruits of your activities. You renounce the fruits of the activity. What is the fruit? It's connected with the desire to enjoy the fruit. So he's saying you renounce the material desires, and that's how you see the renunciation in perfection. So in the previous verse, Krishna is a person is said to be elevated in yoga, having renounced all material desires. And there are various kind of material terminologies used. We not don't want to yoga rura, etc. We don't want to get lost in those terminologies and understanding. Those are terminologies, but they are explained very simply by Srila Prabhupada. So these are advanced performers of Ashtanga yoga. Dhyana yoga is also is being called here Ashtanga yoga. So these devotees, um, they have renounced the material desires and they don't act for sense gratifications. And neither they engage in the fruitive activities, any activity that will derive a result, which means they're not driven by the result to do the activity. And Krishna has also said that, but still you have to do activity because you can't not do the activities. There's not even a moment that mind is not engaged in thinking, and therefore activities will be generated. Hence, they do activities, but not driven by the fruits, but by the sense of duty that I have to do activities because I must do it. And this activity is done in, when the activity is done in such a way, it is called mode of goodness. It leads to self-realization because such activity, when performed in the service of the Lord, becomes nishkam karma yoga. I do not have attachment with the fruits, and it's helping me to link me with the Lord, hence yoga. And the means to link to the Lord is the karma or the action, hence karma yoga. And therefore, nishkam, I'm not attached to the result or kam, the propensity to enjoy. Hence, nishkam karma yoga, which is a part of bhakti yoga, because in bhakti yoga, you work for the Lord, but in love and devotion. And there are various levels of that activity and consciousness of that activity, basis that one can be considered as advanced, neophyte, or somebody who is in between. Now, when we look at verse number 5 here, let's look at these few verses quickly, up to 9th. One must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. For him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. For one who has conquered the mind, supersoul is already reached, for he has attained tranquility. To such a man, Happiness and distress, heat and cold, honor and dishonor are all the same. A person to be established in self realization is called a yogi when he is fully satisfied by virtue of knowledge and realization. Such a person is situated in trance and is self controlled. He sees everything, whether it's pebbles, stones, or gold, as the same. So, up to this point, we can see how Krishna is talking about control of the mind. Why mind? Because mind is the king of the senses. It is the mind in which the desires are residing. So mind is also called as reservoir of desires. Now mind has a propensity to accept and reject. And this propensity of accept and reject, Krishna, Prabhupada has given in the next verse purport when we were reading, he's saying that you accept what is favorable to Krishna consciousness, you reject what is not favorable to Krishna consciousness. In this way, one can use the tendency of mind of accepting and rejecting in a rightful way. But otherwise, if we see the material mind, when it is materially engaged at a certain time, when it is engaged in certain activity or things, after a certain time, it will reject it. I don't want it anymore. And then it needs or looks for the new engagement. And in this way, we see that when minds achieve something, would like to then achieve something newer because now it has rejected it. And moment by moment, mind functionality is to accept or to reject. This is the function of mind. Now, those whose mind all are self-controlled, initially, when the yogi advances, whether we are considering a sadhaka, a person who is on pursuit of spiritual path, when he's advancing, he would become indifferent to pebbles, stones, or gold, which means that he's no more driven by the results. This is what it really means. He is no more driven by the mode of passion, because mode of passion means I'm driven by the result. Therefore, if I get pebbles, I'll be unhappy. If I get gold, I'll be very happy. But if I'm not happy or unhappy by getting pebbles or gold, then I have achieved a status of consciousness where I'm no more attached to these fruits. And therefore, I can be said to be an advanced sadhaka. But if one advance more, then he would also be able to see the envious and the non-envious, the friends and the enemies, the pious and the sinners, the uh, well-wishers and the benefactors, the neutrals, the mediators, everybody as the same. The sinners and the pious with the equal mind. You see, first, one is able to see things or the matter with the equal vision. Then one is able to see the souls or the people with the equal vision. They no more differentiate that. Um, for example, when we see these saintly personalities, they are non-judgmental. You are you may one may be a person of great riches or wisdom, other may be poverty driven or not so intelligent. They don't see that. All they see a soul in the heart, in that body, a soul who is seeking God, and they're willing to go to any extent, um, equally, with equal effort, with equal compassion to all of them, without any distinction. And when a person comes to this stage, that is described as even advanced or a yoga ruda stage. And in this stage, the mind has obtained equanimity, is now no more flickering, is no more rejecting, or accepting. It's driven by the absolute. When there is no material desires left in the mind or the propensity to enjoy the material world, Prabhupada explains in his purport, then what, how will he take decisions? Who will govern his intelligence? Because it's not governed by the external factors anymore, because he's not allowing his mind and senses to take decisions based upon his own desires of enjoying the fruitive activities. So who is going to take control of that intelligence? Where will he take decisions from? Where will his intelligence be born of? Where will his decisions churn and process? Srila Prabhupada explains, by the super soul in the heart. Super soul is seated. Because he's not governed from outside, he will be governed from inside. Who is there inside? Super soul is seated inside. He'll be always happy within. He will be always doing things in accordance with dharma, as dictated by the Lord himself, because his intelligence and his mind is now working under the reins, so to say, under the control of the Supreme, which is seated in the heart in the form of the super soul. And that way, then the person is said to be established in self-realization. He's no more governed by the senses. So in text number 10, it is explained that how one should be seeing the body, mind, and self in relationship with the Supreme. And it is explained one should live alone in a secluded place, carefully control his mind. But Prabhupada has given purport in which he's saying that one should live in seclusion to the materialist people. So secluded place in the devotion does not mean that one has to become Bhajananandi, one has to go to a dham, sit under the tree, and just practice yoga, because that is not our position right now. Even Arjun's position was not that. Krishna explained to him that you may think yourself very advanced, but because he's sampling Arjun as a conditioned soul, so he's saying that to live in a secluded place, etc., is not something very practical. Because, see, the heart is not pure. Unless the heart is pure, unless the knowledge is residing in the heart, the transcendental knowledge, the material desires will come and disturb the mind. And as soon as the mind is disturbed, the mind will carry one to perform those kind of activities which can fulfill those desires. And therefore, it will not be possible to stay steady. Therefore, we have, Srila Prabhupada has given a golden formula that is stay in association with devotees. That way, you are in seclusion of materialistics people. Now, I was just looking at this two verses of Srimad Bhagavatam and wanted to get a little bit deeper into the mind and its functionalities. When the creation happened, the mind actually is born out of mode of goodness. That verse is not here. Let me see if that verse is somewhere else. Okay. So mind is actually born out of mode of goodness. Yeah, it's the previous verse, 27th verse of the chapter 26 in Canto 3rd. If you see, this particular verse says, from the false ego of goodness, another transformation takes place. From this evolves the mind, whose thoughts and reflection give rise to desire. The point being that one may think that mind is mode of passion, but surprisingly, it's the intelligence which is born out of mode of passion, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, and mind is born out of mode of goodness. Now, I was putting my mind to it, my mind, that, or rather, I was trying to research and figure out how is this possible. Now, if we see the function of intelligence is to make a plan of execution of what mind desires. So actually, the activity part is actually taken care by the intelligence, which is born out of passion. Whereas thinking, feeling, willing aspect of the mind is actually done by the mind itself, and hence we can see that how the active portion of the activity is done by intelligence, and the thinking, willing, feeling part is the mind, which is born out of goodness. Now, this particular fact that we know now is that mind is born out of goodness is then further elaborated because mind is born out of goodness. It says the mind of the living entity is known by the name of Lord Aniruddha, the supreme ruler of the senses. He possesses a bluish black form resembling a lotus flower growing in the autumn. He is found slowly by the yogis. Now, in this, it is mentioned, I was reading other lectures of Srila Prabhupada and in this purport as well, that how the function of mind, how the mind can be really controlled. Mind can be controlled by putting back this mind into the absorption of the form of the Lord, because mind uh, is known by the name of Lord Aniruddha. So yogis generally, Prabhupada explained that yogis are supposed to focus their mind on the form of Aniruddha, which is the Chaturvya expansion of the Lord Krishna, of Lord Krishna. It is mentioned that Lord Krishna has 24 forms, of which one is Aniruddha. And these are first Chaturvya form, Sankarshana, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, and Vasudeva. So if by meditating on Aniruddha, one can become free from the agitation of acceptance and rejection. If we read this line here, yeah, Krishna and Prabhupada also uh, here, if you see, Prabhupada has refuted that meditation upon void is a modern invention of fertile brain of some speculator. It's nowhere mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam. And one can speculate and think that, okay, let me focus on the void. It won't bear any results because it's not bona fide to begin with. The only way one can control the mind is by meditating the mind on the form of the Lord. Then it will stop agitating and it will stop doing this acceptance and rejections. When one's mind is fixed upon Aniruddha, one gradually becomes God realized. He approaches to pure state of Krishna consciousness, which is the ultimate goal of life. Now, if we also look at this particular verse, which all of us have read many times in various contexts, and Srila Prabhupada has been quoting the first two lines of this verse quite a lot. The story of Ambrish Maharaj. Savai Manaha Krishna Padara Vindayor, Vacham Sivaikuntha Gunanuvarnane, Karau Harer Mandira Marjanadishu, Shrutin Chakarachyuta Sat Kathodaye. Maharaj Ambrish was always engaged in his mind in meditating upon the lotus feet of Krishna. So this mind is such an important indriya which can really change the functionality of the entire body, because mind is some creates the desires and everybody else is executing those desires, you see. So Maharaj Ambrish always engaged his mind in meditating upon the lotus feet of Krishna, his word in describing glories of the Lord, hands in cleansing the Lord's temple, ears in hearing the words spoken about Krishna, eyes seeing the deity of Krishna, and like that, and engage his sense of touch in touching the bodies of the Lord's devotees, engage his sense of smell, smelling the fragrance of tulsi offered to the Lord, engage his tongue in tasting the Lord's prasadam, engage his legs in walking the holy places. And like that, we can see that how Ambrish Maharaj is engaging all his senses in devotional service, which is the way to increase attachment for the Lord. And this is actually a perfection of Dhyana Yoga, because now you are meditating upon Lord Aniruddha, you're engaging your mind in the service of the Lord, and then mind will get purified and will be able to practice with determination. We also see in this particular verse that there are words which are used are determination, possessiveness, and um, control of the mind, etc. So I was going through some lectures of Srila Prabhupada, and and he's picked up this line here: the yoga practitioner should be determined and should be patiently prosecuting the practice without deviation. So he mentions here that uh, determination should be strong. Now, if you indulge in sex life, determination will not come. Determination will be flickering. Therefore, Prabhupada is recommending, therefore, sex life should be controlled or given up. If it is possible, please give it up altogether. Then, then you will get determination. Because determination is a bodily affair. So these are methods of how to get determination. Now, he further goes on saying that determination means that one has to continue with patience and perseverance. And he gives the example of a girl who's married to a husband. That she has to be patient. It's not that one would marry today and tomorrow they will have a child immediately. No. And Prabhupada said that just like a woman, a husband and a wife, they're sure to get a child, but they have to be patient and determined. And if they become impatient, they lose their determination. Therefore, um, one should have a lot of patience, and determination will come. Determination will be destroyed. He said, it'll be loss of determination will be due to the excessive sex life. These are the consequences. You give the example of a sparrow who lost her eggs in the waves of the ocean, but the sparrow was very determined. And looking at the determination, Garuda came, and when he challenged the ocean, then ocean was um, humbled and was forced and obliged to give the eggs of the sparrow back to the sparrow. So this way, one should have that kind of determination. And he also picks up the example of Gandhi, saying that Gandhi challenged Britishers on the strength of his determination. And what kind of challenge? That I will not fight. I, I, I will not cooperate with you. And what kind of weapons? No, no weapon, without any weapon. So he says, non-violence. All right, you fight, you kill me, I shall not attack you. And somebody fights like this. Prabhupada is saying nobody fights like this. But look, Gandhi declared war. In war you fight, but he said I won't fight. And he removed such a powerful British empire, because after British lost India, they also lost possessions in the Far East, Egypt, Suez Canal, everything was lost. So Prabhupada is just picking up this example. Mostly he is challenging Gandhi, but here he has picked up a portion of his life where he's saying that he's picking it up for a good determination, example of good determination. So um, this way we can engage all our senses in Krishna's service, and that way our mind will get purified. And when the mind is purified, it will not reject or accept. And in this context, I was reading this wonderful book by His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj, and he has beautiful of a paragraph I wanted to read. I think it's already the time, but let me just read one little paragraph. How intelligence, when is engaged, how it can purify, and in what kind of circumstances determination is so very required. So when Giriraj Swami Maharaj was in Bombay, and Srila Prabhupada acquired this Hare Krishna land, they called it Hare Krishna land, just like in America, they call it Disneyland, basis that Maharishi Prabhu had recommended Hare Krishna land, and Prabhupada agreed. So this Hare Krishna land, and they had paid some advance money, and Prabhupada said that all the devotees must stay on the land now, but there were hardly any facilities on the land. So Viraj Maharaj is explaining what kind of facilities they had, and you see how determination comes by the order of the spiritual master. And it says that the walls were brick up to 3 feet, and it was slit bamboo rods woven together like chatai up to the roof, um, which were later covered by tarpaulin. Tarpaulin is like a blue plastic so that water doesn't come. On that roof foundation of building apparently meant to be another tenement, which was never completed. So inside the covered structure, there was a concrete floor, and there was a cement covering, and there were holes and tops over the roof leaking when it rained. To make matter worse, the hut proved to be a heaven for rats. Bombay rats were notorious, unlike rats anywhere else. Not only were they huge, the size of cats, 18 or 20 inches long, with big teeth, but they bit into your skin so stealthily that you wouldn't know it. You would keep sleeping, but then wake up and find yourself in a pool of blood. Hut was infested with flies, cockroaches, ferocious mosquitoes, so we were constantly being bitten, stung, harassed by all sorts of vermin and insects. Devotees were living in this terrible hut. One little part was the kitchen, and drinking water was kept in a large clay pot. When he opened the lid, swarms of mosquitoes would fly out. Many of the devotees were completely sick with dysentery and things, and they told me, "Oh, you will get it too." And judging from the water, I believed them. The first day I ate prasad in the hut, I noticed rats running across the roof. I was wondering if they would fall in my plate. It didn't happen to me, but it happened to Dravida, a devotee from America. One of the rats was scampering around the hut, fell right in his plate. There was no meal at night, just milk and reading Krishna book. But before we drank the milk, we would have to remove the bugs and mosquitoes. This one paragraph I was reading, interesting book. I also read that how one wealthy supporter would come on every Sunday, and he'll bring a lot of fruits, and that day they will feast upon the fruits. So this kind of charity was being performed, and this is no less than what Krishna is describing as meditating upon one-pointed meditation upon Krishna, because in this such charities, devotees are constantly praying to Lord Krishna. There was deities of Radha Ras Bihari on the campus, and they were worshipping the deities. At the same time, Giriraj Maharaj fell very sick, and he was in fever. All day he was lying under a table because there was no other place to lie down. And when he was asked that, "Why are you doing this? Let's take you to some other place, comfortable place," he would say, "No, my spiritual master has asked me to serve the deities here and not leave the land. I'm going to be staying here." And in such austerities, when you have this painful situation, you would be remembering Krishna, constantly praying in your heart to Krishna. Now, this is one extreme of engagement, which was not very favorable. We all tend to serve in a favorable situation, but it is also very important that if we are able to serve in unfavorable situation, Prabhupada told them that don't you want purification of the heart? So in that direction, working for the Supreme Lord, all the senses and mind and intelligence involved in the project, Giriraj Maharaj showed this wonderful example of surrender and devotion to the Lord, purifying the mind, controlling the mind, not doing what whimsically the senses are asking for. So with that, I think the time is over now. If there's any comment or any question, please, you can take that. Okay, there's a question here. What in practice does meditating on lotus feet of Krishna mean? Does it mean looking at Krishna's feet in a picture or murti, or imagining his feet in mind while chanting? Very, very good question. Um, One thing I want to refute is it definitely does not mean to imagine lotus feet of Krishna in the mind while chanting. While chanting, we just focus on the sound vibration of holy names, and we control the mind. When the mind is going anywhere, even to uh, transcendental subject matters, it's best to bring the mind back onto the sound vibration of the Lord, because sound vibration of the Lord is Lord himself. There's no difference. And when Lord himself is present, then why should mind be going anywhere else? Now, with regards to meditating on the lotus feet of Krishna, means that there could be many meanings, and I'll perhaps give one or two here. When you take darshan of the deities of the Lord, you can see the lotus feet of Krishna. And when you practice this daily, when you go to the temple or you have the deities at home, the lotus feet of Krishna, when you close your eyes, they'll appear in your heart. You will feel their presence. And you can see these are the beautiful lotus feet of Krishna. That is literal meaning of doing what it is said, meditating on the lotus feet of Krishna. Other way of looking at it is that we take shelter of lotus feet of Krishna by surrendering ourselves in the lotus feet of Krishna, which means that all our activities from the waking up or the sunrise to the sunset is all about pleasing and surrendering Krishna. And that way, we can meditate upon the lotus feet of Krishna. Also, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, would be considered as the lotus feet of Krishna. When we study Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, then we are meditating upon the lotus feet of Krishna, because Canto 10 is the face of Krishna, a smiling face of Krishna. So we start meditating upon the lotus feet of Krishna, gradually rise to the thighs and the groins and the middle part and chest and neck, and then we come to the Canto 10, which is the lotus face of Krishna. That way also we can meditate upon lotus feet of Krishna. So these are some of the ways we can meditate upon lotus feet of Krishna. So Bhi Mataji is saying, thank you for the session on the topic of Yogaruda today. Every action and outer appearance is harshly judged. It is impossible to be 100% non-judgmental for common people. But compassion for humanity may allow us to be non-judgmental around 20 to 30%. May also importantly, our judgment of self gives rise to desires and possessiveness. Sorry, not a question, just an observation. Uh, so this is very correct observation from the conditioned soul point of view. But as we discussed, when we develop this realization of self, where we are able to distinguish between the body and the soul, we're able to distinguish between the soul and the mind and the intelligence and the desires, then this advanced stage of self-realization, one is able to come in a situation, a position that one becomes non-judgmental. Non-judgmental can be used in various ways in a mundane perspective. For example, I don't want to judge on the basis of sex, creed, caste, all those points that they put on the websites when you're looking for jobs, your ethnicity, or what was your sex at the time of birth. They ask questions like these days. Or in your medical record, what is your sex, what is your ethnicity, do you have any disability? They want to show that they are not non-judgmental, but somewhere they're calling out these things, and therefore they are definitely judging you in some sense uh, on the material platform, because the whole thinking is hovering around the body, whereas the living entity is not the body, it's the soul. Therefore, one who realizes this, all the distinction based on the body and its relationship with the matter or land or caste or creed, etc., will not be seen, because he can't just see the body anymore, just like we can't see the soul anymore. He can't just see the body anymore. And once that stage, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma, Sochitina Kankshiti, when that stage is reached by the yogi, then He will be non-judgmental from any external point of view, from the material point of view. He might then say, okay, the soul is needing advancement in spiritual life. Hence, he will use his discrimination and give that knowledge, and that kind of judgment will be there, but not this kind of material judgment. And by Prabhupada's mercy, this can be achieved by the chanting of holy names of the Lord, by following the regulated principles, by being in association of the devotees, by worshipping the deities, by following the Navada Bhakti or 9 process of devotional service, and by just hearing the transcendental knowledge through the Shruti, Smriti, etc., we can one can achieve this status. So our identification of being a soul equates level of compassion within us. Thanks for the answer, Cedric. Our identification of being a soul equates level of compassion within us. So that's what we saw, that a person who's realized self-realization comes along with the God realization. They happen simultaneously, because one realizes self, also realizes that one is part and parcel of something higher, which is supreme. And therefore, such a person would be able to see the pebbles, the gold equally, would be able to see, that was the verse today, wasn't it? That would be able to see the enemies, the friends equally, the sinners and the pious equally. So such vision would definitely develop, because Krishna is saying that by performing these yogic processes, and bhakti yoga being the fastest, the easiest, and the most rewarding, definitely can provide this kind of a vision. Okay, it's already 56 past, and if there's no more questions, then perhaps we can now close this session. Thank you very much again to all of you to kindly come here and listen and discuss. And I shall see you very soon again next week. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
Hare Krishna.